Hello, good people of California, one of my absolute most favorite places in the world. I had some great times living there for a brief period of time in the 90s down at Venice Beach. I get back there as often as I possibly can. I've got some friends who live over in Santa Clarita, some people living down in Santa Monica. I love California. I love the place. I love the people. Yeah, it's one of those places where I always go, how come I didn't end up staying there? But here I am, actually, all the better for the fact that I continued to travel the globe, I guess, on my health mission. And now I occupy quite proudly the position of Chief Product Officer for Zinzino. For those of you, probably most of you, who've no idea who I am, my name is Colin Robertson. I'm an exercise and nutrition scientist, and I've spent, well, really the past 30 years working in health, fitness, sports performance, from all the way back in the 90s at Gold's Gym down in Venice, believe it or not, all the way through to working on 4 Olympic cycles, Beijing, London, Rio, Tokyo. I've worked in Premiership football, national and international rugby, you name it. I'm an environmental physiologist. What does that mean, I hear you say? Well, what it means is that when you're one of those crazy people who decides they're going to climb Everest or race across the Sahara Desert or row across the Atlantic Ocean, trek to the North Pole, trying to live in Antarctica, I'm one of the people you get involved to try and keep you alive. And I mostly work on that environmental preparation, physical preparation, psychological, psychophysiological, and of course, nutrition. And I've trained several people to do all those things and more that I've just listed. And I've been a research coordinator, primarily in health, it has to say. I mean, if you're ever really bored and you Googled my name, you'd see my publications, my scientific publications are more around sports performance and sports performance nutrition. But really actively, something I've always been passionate about is health, and health on a community, social, and international scale. Because we know, and it's no longer controversial to say, that the impact of our modern diet has wreaked havoc with our health. And I was switched onto this at a very early age. And it's been the red thread that has gone through my entire career. Whilst I've had an amazing time in sport, I've always been passionate about health. And in fact, I always use sport and my experience of sport as a test bed for what athletes were like, what humans were like under the most stressful conditions. Pretty much working on the notion if we can get it right there, we can get it right anywhere. And the trickle down effect, what we establish there, we then take and we make work on a national and international scale for average people like us. And so prior to joining Zinzino, if you cast your mind back to April of 2020, here in the UK, we were just in those early stages of lockdown. And for me, as someone who was used to commuting 120 miles a day, I was the lab director for the Queen's Laboratories in Greater Manchester. And I was a research coordinator working on research strategies that were national and international for health innovations and for cities changing diabetes. And we were focused on health parity. So how do you take something that is well established in the research and embed it so that everybody benefits from it, regardless of what income they have, their socioeconomic background, their ethnic, whatever? You make health equity. And that's more challenging than you might think. And this was lockdown. We were going through this initial exciting, scary phase of literally the whole world as we know it grinding to a halt. And I knew that this was a defining moment in history. I was very close to it. Here in the UK, I was a part of the NHS strategy panel on what do we do now about COVID, now that we've learned or tried to learn this lesson. And we knew early on that the biggest problem was for sure the virus. But really, the biggest problem was that too many people were already sick. And that's what the virus took advantage of. From those who were overweight, to those who are dealing with type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, cardiovascular disease, certain types of cancers, metabolic syndrome, the list goes on and on. Too many of the world were sick, and we had to shut the world down so we could hide away from a virus. And I said back then, and it was quoted in the press, and I'll say it again now. In the early days, we tried to play hide and seek with the virus when we should have played chess. We should have had a far more intelligent, thought out strategy. It wasn't just me. Time has proven us right. But anyway, at this exciting point in time, here I am, sitting right here in my study at home. If I could show you out the window, it couldn't be any more what you'd expect from someone who lived in the UK. Across from me, there are open fields, there is a big farm, there are barns, there are trees. The cliche, the stereotype of what people think England is, that's how I live. Aren't I fortunate? But here I was, scratching my head, because the World Health Organization had issued a statement that estimated that 6 billion people in the world were dealing with an omega-3 deficiency. And that's a real problem. That's a real problem, because essentially omega-3 and omega-6 are essential fatty acids, and they make up what we call the lipid membrane of the cell. And you, me, all of us are a collection of approximately 37 trillion cells. And so when there's a compromise, when there is a deficiency at a cellular level, there's a fundamental deficiency in our state of health. And so I was here trying to fix this problem. And my initial response was no problem. I know we can't take out 8 billion fish from the sea every day, so we can't do it through the diet for sure. But ever since I was a young boy, my mum was from Dublin, Ireland, very proud to say. And even back in the 1970s, she knew nothing about food, but she knew that she should take a cod liver oil capsule. So I'd grown up in a culture whereby there was already a value attached to this, and people took a supplement to correct it. The problem was, I'm a researcher, and we are led by the research. And in 2018, there was a Cochrane meta-analysis systematic review, which is one of the most powerful types of research there is, that quantified all of the research around omega-3 supplementation. Over 112,000 people were included in this analysis, over 79 really good quality trials, and the outcome, the finding was standard fish oil supplements don't work. So I had a problem. And I'm a scientist, I'm a researcher, not a great one for believing in things like fate and fortune and those kind of things. But my phone rang. And I never answer my phone when I'm focused on a task. I never do. I eliminate distractions, focus on what I'm doing. But I had no obvious way to approach this problem. And so my phone rang and I looked, and it was a good friend of mine who at that time actually was quite senior in an American company that you'll know called Under Armour, big sports brand. And I'd done a lot of work with them over the years. And I knew Tony well, and I knew he'd had some health issues. And so I answered the call. I welcomed the distraction. And I'll never forget, Tony said, "Col, you're my go-to guy when it comes to nutrition. My doctor over here in the US has recommended that I need to really consider omega-3. I couldn't believe it. And he said, "What do you know about omega-3? And have you ever heard of a company called Zinzino?" And I said, "Well, funnily enough, Tony, I know a lot about omega-3, but I've never heard of this Zinzino. But let me tell you, if they make an omega-3 supplement, it doesn't work." And he said to me, he said, "Carl," he said, "my doctor over here said it's the only one in the world that does. So can you check it out for me?" And he said, "If you say it's rubbish, then I'll leave it. But if you think there's something to this as to why it might be different, then I'm going to give it a go." And interestingly, he was interested in it from a business point of view. Now, that's none of my business. I'm not a businessman. I'm an academic. I'm a researcher. I'm a practitioner, but I'm not a business person. But I found that interesting too. So I had nothing to lose, and I had no solution to the problem I was working on. So I thought, hey, I'll take a look. And then you could just say, well, fast forward the clock, 3 years, and now I'm the chief product officer for the whole company. So clearly there was a good outcome. But I want to go back, because there was a moment that's rare. And I loaded up the page and I looked at this product, Balance Oil. And I had that moment where you realize wow, that's it. And then I thought, why didn't I think of this? For lots of reasons. But the genius of it was simplicity. It was, and genius often is. It takes a genius to identify the obvious. And what those clever people had done is they realized that the fish oil refinement process, well, it breaks down the omega-3, isolates it, separates it, makes it vulnerable to the air, to the heat when we try to consume it. That's why very little of it is active at a cellular level. And what they realized is that it needed to be rebound to a polyphenol. In nature, wherever you find an omega-3, it is bound to a polyphenol. That's how nature provides it. And we always want things that function like food. Nature always knows best. And so what they've done is they've very cleverly taken this proprietary blend of really highest possible grade quality fish oil, but then encapsulated that in a really high phytonutrient rich polyphenol extra virgin olive oil. And I just realized, there you go. That's how you do it. And then I got told there was a test. And I thought, yeah. Of course there's a test. The oldest trick in the book, snake oil industry. You know, I tell you it's bad, and then I give you something to fix it. So I thought, right, I best check this test out. And then I saw it was Vitas Laboratories in Norway, one of the singularly most respected, reputable scientific laboratories in the world, who've partnered with Oxford University, Cambridge University, Harvard, Stanford, over here with the NHS, millions of pounds of centralized European funding to develop new techniques. And I thought, wow. So the test is a real test. It's called the Trondheim Essential Fatty Acids Profile Test. It's a well-known test to anybody who works in our area, but they just do it really, really well. They have the most advanced version of it. Then I realized who was on the scientific advisory group, Professor Angela Rizzo from the Milan Institute, who is a world-leading recognized omega-3, omega fatty and polyunsaturated fatty acids specialist. And I think, yeah, this is different. This isn't the standard run-of-the-mill, just make a ton of something and try and make money. And so my interest was piqued. And just to conclude the story, I clearly got back on the phone to my friend and said, yes, take it, and I'm going to take it. And then I won't bore you with the rest of the story, but here I am, very proudly leading the research team, very proudly working with what I can only describe as a phenomenal, incredibly talented, passionate, driven product team, whose only objective is to do health as best as it can be done. That's how we measure ourselves. Are we keeping up with the very latest and best of the research? Are we utilizing our research network groups to stay directly plugged in to what's happening and what it is we need to do? And what it is and what we need to do is buck the trend. We need to give health back. And we can do that. We can do that by developing products that make a difference. And the best part for me is we are proudly test-based nutrition. We don't just make promises. We invite you to challenge us by challenging yourself. Take the test. See where you're at. Take the product. Does the product alter those parameters? Does it increase your omega-3 index and ratio? Does it increase those essential levels of certain vitamins? And we're working all the more to stay at the front and actually push ahead. And so every time we bring new people on board to join the mission, because we need numbers. You know, there is so much working against us. The narrative around food is controlled by actually the people who are contributing towards the problem. And so the way we win that is through direct communication. We speak to our family, our friends, our community, and we do well by looking after our own. And it creates huge overlap. And I am confident, because I see it every week, this overlap will grow at such a rate, will make such a huge difference. And so, thank you for being a part of it. I sit behind the scenes, researching, doing the best we can to give you something that's real, that can make a real difference. And you people are the ones who unlock this and unleash this to have every chance of success, to do what it needs to do. So for myself personally, certainly from everybody in the product team, and I know for sure everybody when it comes to Zinzino and the family that is Zinzino, welcome and thank you. And I can't wait to see you all further down the road, especially if one of you amazing people is going to invite me back to California, which is a place full of people I dearly love. Stay well, be well, do well, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon.